Look in your notes packet at example 3. Now that we know how to complete the square, we can solve this problem. We'll start by leaving all of the x terms on the left-hand side and leave a little space and subtract that 7 over to the right-hand side. So this space is going to be for completing the square. We want to add that number to both sides. So take 10, divide it by 2, and square it. You should have gotten 25, so if I add that to both sides, I can write the left-hand side like x minus 5 all squared equals negative 7 plus 25. So that should be 18. Now I can solve this using square roots. Once we take the square root, we can add 5 to both sides to get x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 18. And now we reduce the square root of 18, so our answer would be what? So you should get 5 plus or minus 3 square root 2, because 18 is like the square root of 9 times 2, and so that's how I got 3 root 2. Now let's take a look at example 4. This problem looks a little bit different because our a value is 3, not 1. But luckily, in this problem, we can factor a 3 out and get x squared plus 4x plus 5 equals 0. And then we can divide both sides by 3, and the 3 cancels out because 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I get this on the left-hand side. And 0 divided by 3 is what? Just 0. So now I want to solve it exactly like example 3. I leave my x's on the left-hand side and leave a little space so that I can complete the square. And then move my 5 over so I get negative 5 and then plus my little space. When I complete the square here, I do 4 divided by 2 and then square it. So I get 4. And when I add that on both sides, I can rewrite the left-hand side as x plus 2 all squared equals negative 1. Now I take the square root of both sides, and I get x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1. And what's the square root of negative 1? So I can replace that with I and say x equals negative 2 plus or minus I instead of the square root of negative 1. And all I did on that last step was subtract the 2 from both sides to cancel it out. Now skip ahead to number 5, example 5, where we are writing quadratics in vertex form. Remember, vertex form is up here where H and K is my vertex. And how we're going to start this is by completing the square, but leaving everything where it is. So I'm going to say y equals x squared minus 12x plus a little space for completing the square plus 18. So when I complete the square, I get 12 divided by 2, 6. 6 squared is... So now that I've completed the square, I added 36 on both sides. I'm going to rewrite my factor here. X squared minus 12x plus 36 is the same thing as x minus 6 all squared plus 18. And then I just subtract 36 from both sides to get y equals x minus 6 all squared minus 18. And now you can see this is in vertex form. The last step here is going to be identifying the vertex. And what would my vertex be? you should get 6, negative 18.